Okay, awesome, and we are live. Welcome back to Finding Her Voice. It's our 13th episode. We are a podcast about women who make film by the women who love film. I'm Allison Johnson, and once again, I am joined by TYF Editor-in-Chief Gabrielle Bondi and fellow movie and TV writer AJ Caulfield. While it may not seem like it for most of us, possibly AJ notwithstanding, summer is just about here, and with it comes blockbuster season. So, of course, we settled on this as our theme for May. And it may come as little surprise just how few there were to pick from. We ended up on Catherine Hardwicke's adaptation of Twilight, 2008, and Catherine Bigelow's 1991 action film Point Break. Not an obvious duo, but an interesting one nonetheless. Hopefully, with June's Wonder Woman, directed by Patty Jenkins, and the upcoming Wrinkle in Time adaptation by Ava DuVernay, we'll start seeing these films being put in the very capable hands of female directors. Which leads me to my starter question, which is what blockbuster would have been improved had a female director taken the helm? So I don't know if either of you want to start with this one.
Yeah, so the first thing that came to mind for me was Transformers. And I'm not even a big Transformers fan, no thanks to Michael Bay, but I just feel like that could have been a franchise, like a blockbuster franchise that could have really changed the game if it had a female director, because there's this, the big stereotype that like men in their cars, and it would have been great to kind of see a female-led story about her and her adventures with her car. And I think it would have like just been really cool. I don't know. I mean, I was just thinking of blockbusters and ones that I didn't like, and that was one of the first ones that came to mind. And I just think, it would definitely have been improved by a female director. Maybe you can argue any other director, but but I think, I think that's something that, that franchise needs to get retooled again, and with someone who is willing to do something different with it and newer, and I don't know, just something that would actually appeal to everyone.
No, I agree, and especially with the first two movies with Megan Fox kind of being the mechanical engineer person in it, right? Like she worked in the shop, like whereas I feel like Shia LaBeouf's character wasn't very proactive in building things, but or at least in the mechanical side. So it would have been interesting. It would have been interesting just to see that whole movie from Megan Fox's point of view, but that was never going to happen with Michael Bay, whose point of view preference was like exploiting her body. So
yeah, exactly. Just doing those camera pans up her body, everything she's in. Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of agree also though that like any other director might have improved. AJ, I really liked your pick.
Yeah,
I kind of agree, but I almost don't. But I'll let you talk about it first.
Yeah, it might be a little bit of a cop-out, but the Ghostbusters reboot, I think that a lot of what I find contention with that film, it's not because it's all women, it's because the plot isn't there, and the story is really odd, and it's not directed well. It's just, I don't know, if you're gonna take something that is so successful and reboot it with an all-female cast, I feel like you should have as many women in the writers' room in executive positions as possible to make it feel more authentic. And I feel like it really could have benefited from a female director. And it's kind of disappointing because I know that the same woman who wrote the film with Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy, The Heat, she wrote Ghostbusters. And it's like kind of disappointing that that's pretty much the only female credit that was on there, apart from a producer. I don't know. I just feel like it could have benefited a lot from having a woman at the helm, instead of just having a dude and then making all the dudes get mad that the female reboot wasn't great.
Yeah, it sucks because I am so like steadfast in this idea that I have to defend this movie no matter what.
Yeah.
Really, and not even because I really liked it that much. Like I had fun in the movie theater watching it, but primarily just because I hate all the dude bros who are against it.
Exactly.
So it's like I go over the top, but I
Yeah.
definitely think as much as I like Paul Feig, like I think if you're going to have a male director, I was just talking about this the other day. If I could list like male directors who write women well or who direct women well, like I think he is one of the few who is okay, or at least
Yeah.
makes movies about women. But I agree, like I kind of wish I had seen like, you know, like just like somebody, a female director familiar with comedy
Mhm.
directing this film, like because clearly he doesn't know how to do action either, so it's not like we needed an action director in this.
Yeah, like you mentioned, he's directed some of my favorite like female heavy comedies in the past few years. Like he did Bridesmaids, and he did Spy, which I thought was really fun and charming.
Yeah, I love Spy.
But yeah, I think the film is okay for what it is. You know, it's not a horrible film by any means, but I think the reason why it wasn't as well received as it could have been was because kind of the direction and the writing was all over the place, not because it was like an all-female reboot. It's not bad because of the girls. It's bad because of other things.
No,
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just kind of unfair that we have to like defend a movie that we didn't really, really love just because we know
Exactly.
because these movies are like measured up to standards that are completely unfair. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this later, but especially in terms of blockbusters and female directors who, you know, lose their chances at getting them just because it wasn't, you know, an A+ grade, you know, right off the bat. But yeah, I definitely agree with you there that I think the Blockbuster reboot was a fine movie. It could have been better, and I guess unfortunately
It's almost like it needed a director that didn't just know how to write to the character's funniest or the actress's funniest capabilities.
Yeah.
It needed somebody who knew how to write relationships so that we like cared about these women and their outside lives and not just, you know, Kate McKinnon is doing something silly with her face.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Which was funny, but
there's this really great short film director. She does a lot of short films, and I think she's actually directing a series right now. Her work is primarily on YouTube, but her name's Hazel Hayes. She pitched like an alternate plot and storyline for the Ghostbusters reboot, and like you said, like actually writing for their characters and not just for the actresses. And her idea was like fantastic. If that was the real movie, I would be sold.
We'll have to link to that page now
Definitely.
afterwards because it definitely sounds interesting. So I don't know about you guys, but like before I came down to my pick, I kept floating the Hunger Games in my mind because I was not a fan of the books or the films, and I feel like maybe if somebody had been at the helm that kind of, I guess if there had been a female voice at the helm for a really strong female character, perhaps I would have felt differently. But I thought that was too obvious of a choice, so I ended up picking Jurassic World, which is rather timely considering the headlines being made today about Patty Jenkins being this random big like bet of a choice for Wonder Woman, having only directed one indie film before, or one major indie film before, whereas Colin, I can't pronounce his last name.
Trevorrow.
Yeah, that, because when he got Jurassic World, he'd only directed Safety Not Guaranteed, so it's putting in this limelight all this conversation about how it wasn't a gamble because of her being an indie director. It was a gamble because she was a woman. All that to get back to the Jurassic World point, but I thought it was interesting that was all in the headlines today. I think Jurassic World was a okay movie. I enjoyed it enough. It didn't come close to Jurassic Park, but the thing that irked me the most was the treatment of the female characters. And not even just Bryce Dallas Howard's character, where like she was just the brunt of all of the ire about this film for fair reasons and not. I thought the character the supporting character of her assistant, who was brutally murdered for, I think it was supposed to be laughs, but it just really made me uncomfortable. I think it just shows the lack of like awareness, I guess, of like how powerful images can be, even in a silly dinosaur blockbuster film. And I think if Jurassic World had been put into the hands of a female director, perhaps a female director who could, learn how to do the big budget CGI, but also had a really good handle on relationship dialogue and building characters, so that these deaths didn't just feel like punishment for a character being kind of rude. I don't know. I have so many problems with the female characters in that movie that essentially I just think, like, think if Catherine Bigelow had directed it after seeing Point Break, like, I think so that would have been interesting, because the female character would have had agency. Chris Pratt would still just have been eye candy, and like the action would have been fun, and people wouldn't have been brutalized just for laughs. And I just think it made me uncomfortable to watch in the theater, and it made me uncomfortable to hear people laughing at it. And I think it was the first time in any Jurassic World film where a female character died. So at least like on screen, like an obvious character. So yeah, that was my pick. And then I had Edge of Tomorrow, kind of, just because I think I would have been curious about a female director leading Emily Blunt's character. I think she would have become out more of a hero at the end. Like I think she would have been somebody in the last moment saving the day. But those are just my two picks off the top of my head. There's a lot of them. I just
the majority of blockbusters are directed by men. So
yeah.
No, that's what I was thinking when I was trying to think, okay, well, what can I pick that, maybe it's a blockbuster that it's a female story and it would really benefit from a female perspective. And I was like, wait, all the blockbusters are directed by men and they're male stories. And I'm like, why is this? Where are the women in any spot?
Being eaten by dinosaurs. So like
exactly, snatched up.
Eating, like she was getting eaten by a dinosaur, and then that dinosaur got eaten by another sea dinosaur. Like it was so stupid. Yeah.
It's like they were like punishing her for like neglecting, looking over like the teenager and his little brother, which really the teenager should have just been looking over his little brother instead of moping around all the time.
And really, the little brother was maybe the most annoying character on film that year, and like deserves to get lost. It was even just thinking, out of all the 8 Harry Potter films, that not one was directed by a woman. Like it never even came up in a conversation, it seemed, when they were being floating around. So I don't know, but after seeing Wonder Woman, I hope more women get the chance. I hope this is the signal big studios need, because clearly they have a point of view and a voice to share, and it would be really important. But yeah. Maybe this deserves its own list.
Really?
But I want to move on to the movies we covered. So, just in case people have not seen these movies, somehow missed the Twilight craze. Twilight is about the high school student Bella Swan, played by Kristen Stewart. She's always been a bit of a misfit and doesn't expect life to change much, but of course it does, because this is a teen YA movie, and she moves from Arizona to Washington, where she meets Edward Cullen, played by Robert Pattinson, a handsome but mysterious teen whose eyes seem to peer directly into her soul, says the synopsis. Edward is a vampire whose family does not drink blood, and Bella, far from being frightened, and instead, sexually aroused, enters into a dangerous romance with her immortal soulmate. So that's Twilight. And then Point Break, we take a bit of a divergence here. After a string of bizarre bank robberies in Southern California, with the crooks donning masks of various former presidents, a federal agent, Johnny Utah, played by Keanu Reeves, infiltrates the suspected gang. But this is no ordinary group of robbers. They're surfers, led by the charismatic Bodhi, Patrick Swayze, who are addicted to the rush of thievery. But when Utah falls in love with a female surfer, Tyler, Lori Petty, who is close to the gang, it complicates his sense of duty. So I couldn't get through that synopsis with much of a straight face. Like more so than Twilight. Like I just couldn't handle this film, but I kind of loved it. But I want to start with Twilight because we are all rewatching it. So general thoughts? Did you like it more or less than your first time seeing it?
I liked it less. Mind you, you guys, I was a huge Twilight fan. Like, I read the books. Like, I just was like so obsessed. Like, so when I saw the movie, I was like, it was like the height of this obsession. And I think I was just kind of had those fan blinders on and and didn't really see much outside of like, just the sort of frenzy that I had over it. But now watching it years, and it's been years since I've watched it. Yeah, I I think I kind of caught on to things that I never really noticed before. One thing I really paid attention to was the relationship between Bella and her dad. One thing that I kind of always forgot, like, just kind of faded in the background when compared to everything else that was going on, especially her romance with Edward. But I think this time why I liked it less is mainly just because I realized just how awful that relationship is between Bella and Edward. I mean, just the way he treats her. I was just like, I don't know why I thought that was romantic when I was like 18, but I did. And
Because girls are taught that boys can be jerks, so we're supposed to find it sexy.
yeah, so I mean, like I get some of the fences made for it throughout the years, but I don't know, at the same rate I just felt that it was just a really strange it was a strange romance for me watching it again as an adult, more of an adult at least. And yeah, I think that's one reason why I liked it less. But again, I was really kind of surprised by a lot of the little things outside of that romance that I enjoyed. Like I really enjoyed that vampire baseball scene. I was like, that was really fun.
That's actually one of the few things I remember when I saw the movie. I knew I was excited to see that scene. So it's one that
Yeah.
stuck with me for like following the years that I watched it.
Mhm.
And it was one of the few things I did remember about the film.
Mhm.
But AJ, what about you?
Pretty much the same kind of reaction. Yeah, I remember seeing it. I was 14 when I first saw it, and I have only seen it like in the theaters, and then when I watched it, a week ago, for the podcast. So it's been a really, really long time. I did like it less for the same reasons, the whole creepy relationship, but also because the relationships between Bella and her friends, that dynamic like really struck me as odd. And I know she's an outsider and and I don't like other people and I'm just going to be grumpy all the time. But the dynamic that she had between her with her friends was just kind of awkward to me. And I forget where I had seen it before, but someone had mentioned, it might have been in a tweet, the peripheral characters of Twilight are so much more interesting than Bella and Edward. Like all of his siblings, their past, especially in the books, since you would get like different perspectives. All those different characters. Like I would be down to see a movie about Jasper or any of Edward's other clan members.
I'll have to look this one up, but a while ago, I think Stephanie Meyer in some film group held a contest for fans to make their own short films based in the Twilight universe.
Mhm.
And somebody made one about Alice and Jasper that I guess was really, really good. And like it showed some really talent. And only female fans could do it. Like it was to promote female up and comers. So I'll have to find that and link it too.
Yeah.
But I agree. I do think there were characters that were more interesting on the periphery like that. There's a chance that I took more out of this now than I did it as a teen because I don't. It's like I probably liked this at some point, but I squashed it down so fast when it became cool to dislike it that like I can barely remember like my positive thoughts. But like it did drive home to me that I didn't ever dislike it because of the directing. It's just the source material is pretty rough in the same way that a lot of these YA adaptations are, and they can be elevated or completely tanked by the talent that they bring on board to showcase them. But I thought, I mean, I thought the cinematography was really pretty. I thought the music choices were really well done, and I didn't think the directing was bad, even though I think the emphasis on the staring was a bit obnoxious. But I mean, it's whatever. I was going to ask what your experience was with Twilight in high school, and just because I'm touching on mine a bit, was it's like I read the first two books and saw the first two films in theaters with like big groups of friends, and then it just all of a sudden it became really uncool to like it. So I am curious if you guys fell into that hive mind at all, or if it was like the Gabby who said that you. Gabby.
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry, I missed that part. What was the last thing you said?
Just I guess your high school experiences with it. Did you ever, kind of find yourself in a hive mind about what you were supposed to think about this film?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it was yeah, at first, I mean, it was totally fine to like it. I had my friends who I like got them into it as well, and then I met a lot of people online because of it. And I think it was really when film Twitter started to evolve into something that it became this hive mind. I felt very kind of insecure, and I didn't like being judged for liking these movies. So I kind of let that hive mind get to me where I would be very critical of it, but at the same time, I really liked it. So I was kind of flipping back and forth, honestly, just because, again, it was just this kind of when you're young and you're kind of you want to become a film critic, and you look at the people who are film critics and they're bashing something you like, and you want to fit into this community because you see how cliquish and how connected they are. You kind of feel compelled to be like them and to join that group think. So I grew out of that. I just realized, not to do that because you shouldn't, but that's kind of what influenced my thoughts on it for, I mean, a number of years. I think it's like really, I think after Eclipse came out, I think it was like that period when the last two movies, were released. It was kind of flipping back and forth a lot, whether, I was a fan or not. But now, I mean, I have very good memories of enjoying these movies, and that's like what I relish the most. And I might not be able to appreciate the films as much, and I honestly feel the same way about the Harry Potter movies. I don't really enjoy them as much as I used to, and I just think it came down to direction in that case. But for Twilight, I guess I outgrew it in a way, just the story, and yeah, I don't know. I think it's just for me, it was age, it was experience, it was getting to know what love and life and relationships are really like to kind of give me a frame of reference there.
For me, it was more about kind of the high school cliques, and since I was a freshman in high school when I saw the first film, it was more about I had a core group of girlfriends who had all read the books, and like we were super excited to go see the movies, and so we went out in a big group together, and no other girls like at our school were, I guess, very critical of us going to see it. But as soon as the kind of like popular jock guys got wind that every girl in the school essentially was interested in going to see these Twilight movies, they were like, well, it's really dumb and you girls are dumb for liking this dumb thing. And as the years went on, it was kind of more
male
like
fragility.
Yeah. And it was kind of more like, if you go to see these movies, you're not super cool, or if you kind of like outwardly profess your interest in something that you know, the popular kids don't necessarily find fun, then you're just a weird kid. And I remember I still went to go see the third movie with the same group of friends that, you know, we had always done. But we ended up going to a different theater than we would normally go to because we knew or we suspected that other people would from our school would be seeing a different film that night. And we were like, well, we don't want to be like judged for it. So it was just a weird experience. And then I think after that film, I just kind of grew out of it. But I was never necessarily like ashamed to go see it. I always had fun. But then again, I was young and kind of just experienced films as they came and didn't really think much about film until I was a little bit older.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was the same. I didn't really get onto the film back until like college when I realized that like writing and watching movies made sense. But I was just thinking when you were talking that it is interesting because like I don't think none of my friends were like big readers in high school. So like when we went to see them, it was primarily in the sense that like, oh, the actor who played Cedric Diggory was really cute. We want to go see him in a film. Whereas I read the books and I was like kind of being dweebish and like excited. And then of course the hive mind of like these movies suck. Kristen Stewart's the worst actress ever came into play, and I was like, oh well, yeah, totally, guys. And like it's so upsetting. Like even just hearing you say you guys went to a different theater, while not a big deal then in a sense, it's kind of like, what the fuck?
Like, yeah, like why did we do that? Why didn't we just go? Like,
well, it's just
like,
the
why
idea
do we
that
feel so intimidated by these people.
Because it's just because anything that teen girls like a lot and anything that teen girls are very vocal about is immediately made fun of. You know, YA books, teen vampire romance, boy bands. It's like we're not allowed to be the taste makers. Mm-hmm. And especially as teenage girls, and that's so like, and again, I'm not saying like the Twilight is this big example of like great cinema, but you know, there's validity in teenage girls liking it, and it's interesting to kind of dig deeper and figure out why, rather than just being like, oh well, it's stupid because this group of people likes it. So yeah, that's kind of one. I wanted to talk about Twilight for me to get that one off my chest a little selfishly. But essentially give teenage girls more credit, like, you know, even if what we're liking is silly, like there's usually reasons behind that are worth investigating. But that being said,
say that Twilight opened the eyes for many young women about Hollywood and how a movie is made. Mm-hmm. Because I think before that, majority of us kind of didn't really know, like, kind of the whole process of how movies come together and, like, you know, pre-production, production, post, and the fans, they would follow every single step of the process of these movies being made, and you learn so much, so that when the Hunger Games came around and there was like a lot of the same people in the same fan base, they knew exactly how it was going to go down for those movies. I don't know, I just thought that was really interesting that you know, you could ask any Twilight fan and they kind of have a good idea of how the system works.
It's like Guitar Hero, and listen to me explain this one in a second. It's like Guitar Hero for like, okay, so that was totally a legitimate thing that boys liked, and everybody was like, oh, well, at least it shows them classic songs, and it introduces them to the classics or whatever. Through Twilight, a lot of teenage fans are finding these art house movies through their being fans of Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart now. Mm-hmm. And like, if that's something cool that can come out of liking Twilight, like, that's really neat. And I don't know, I don't think it's worth dismissing, definitely. And I think it is, you know, it's the same, Gabby, talking about that's what Lord of the Rings was for me, was me watching all behind the scenes and being like, so this is how it all clicks together. And like, you know, if that helped one teenager become interested in film, then it's a job well done. Clearly there are still like issues of like kind of abusive relationships in the film, and they should take it at face value, but I don't know. That's a source material thing more than a director thing. Yeah. But speaking of the director, had you two seen any of her other films, like 13?
Yes.
You
I've seen
have?
13 and Lords of Dogtown. And did she do anything else
You
besides
did the Red
that?
Riding
Red
Hood.
Riding Hood, yeah.
Oh, I saw that too.
Yeah, I haven't seen
Um,
any, and it makes me kind of disappointed in myself.
Yeah. I've seen Lords of Dogtown and Red Riding Hood. Lords of Dogtown was kind of a selfish pick because Emile Hirsch, excuse me, was in that, and that was right after I had seen The Emperor's Club, which I loved.
oh yeah.
And I was like, I want to find more of his stuff. And then I just watched this film about like these shaggy haired like skaters, and I was kind of like, iffy about it. And then Red Riding Hood was just really not good, just not good.
I completely forgot about that movie. I did see it though, but yeah, I agree, it wasn't that good.
I think a lot of people forgot about that movie, in fairness.
True.
Which is a good thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm going to segue not naturally or unnaturally to Point Break. I just kind of want to ask what you guys thought. Is it a victim or a survivor of the 90s action film?
Ugh. I think I'm the worst person to ask that because I haven't really watched a lot of
neither have
90s action films. I mean, I might have watched more than I think I have, but for now I can't think of any. But yeah.
That was just me using a way to phrase the question. I haven't seen many either. I've seen Terminator, for Christ's sake. Like,
yeah, I liked it. It was fun. I thought it was really long though.
it was 2 hours. It was over 2
Like
hours.
at the midpoint, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna wrap up soon," and then I like paused it, and I was like, "It's only an hour so far." Which is one more hour anyway.
No joke. I started falling asleep in the middle of it last night, and that's why I had to finish it today because I got bored.
Yeah, but it was fun. I enjoyed it, and would I watch it again? Probably not. Would I watch the remake? No, but I think it had some really cool moments in that. The action was amazing. The skydiving was like so cool. I really enjoyed those scenes.
Mhm.
I think she, like Catherine Bigelow, really like kind of gave off the thrill of those moments. Um, she did that very well, and especially that one scene where they raid that house was really tense. Um, and but yeah, other than that, I mean, I thought it was all right. I appreciated Keanu Reeves' young face the most.
I always appreciate Keanu Reeves' face.
So that was wonderful, and it was great to see Patrick Swayze. Rest in peace, and yeah, that's about it.
I think in terms of victim or survivor, I think that like you mentioned the Terminator, I think a film like that, you can take that premise and you can bring it into essentially any decade and kind of make a film, based around that. I don't think that Point Break would work now, as evidenced by the remake. I think it's very I don't know, campy, I guess, in its premise, in a way that really works with the '90s action films. And I thought it was a lot of fun. But I do think that it's a good film for what it's worth. It was very long, but yeah, overall I really enjoyed it. And Patrick Swayze's mullet was really nice.
I'm going to compare it to another 90s film that I think it didn't live up to as well. Was another Keanu Reeves film. Was like, I think of The Matrix, just because they're both kind of campy and over the top and ridiculous, but like I'd rather rewatch The Matrix than this. But I do think it was a decent film, and I think it was a really good action film. I just don't know if it's like, I guess the term dated comes into play, but I kind of don't like that term either. But again, it wouldn't be like a favorite film of mine today. But I'm curious about what people thought when they saw it upon its release, because it was really visceral, especially in some of those action scenes. And that kind of leads to my point of, how didn't this squash the idea that women can't direct action? Because some of these scenes are gorier or like I guess more brutal than I had anticipated them to be just based on the synopsis alone, where I thought it was primarily about surfers. So like I don't know. I don't know if you guys want to talk about, if it was just like, a victim to its time in terms of female directors, or if this is just an issue that never stops.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's so hard for me to speak to the time. I think I was like 2 years old when it came out. But I'd be curious to see how it was advertised, like how the trailers were back then for it, and what exactly did it advertise of the film. Um,
The
just out of
homoeroticism, because that would have been my pick.
I mean, yeah, that would, bring my butt to the theater. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, I would just be curious because I feel like her directing that would just, I don't think it made a blip on anyone's radar. Like, I don't think anyone knew a female directed that movie. I would see, because I'm thinking like they build it as like produced or executive produced by James Cameron, because that when I was watching it, I noticed that. And that was Catherine Bigelow's husband at the time, I believe, or unless
That's
they
a
were
good
getting split
point.
up. So I wonder if they were kind of writing on his name and him being well known because Terminator had come out, and he's was pretty big at that time. Uh, yeah, I mean that's like kind of my first thoughts on how that went about, because I just feel like also just the 90s is full of so much misogynism that like I don't know, they don't care, they didn't give a shit.
Yeah, I actually watched the trailer before I went and like watched the
Okay.
film. So I can speak to the marketing at least. It was cut between scenes of like the robberies. So you'd see like part of the robbery, and then it would cut to like surfing, and Patrick Swayze's character talking to the other surfers, and kind of it would just cut through that, and it was pretty action heavy. And in big 90s like sunsetty font, it looks like it's just in like word like art. It would be the main cast, their names. And then I just pulled it up because you saying that executive producer James Cameron, that's actually on the first card. It's like Point Break, excuse me. And then kind of Largo Entertainment, Tapestry Films production, a Catherine Bigelow film. It doesn't say directed by Catherine Bigelow. A Catherine Bigelow film, and then Patrick Swayze, Keanu Reeves, Point Break, Gary Busey, Lori Petty. Executive producer James Cameron. And then when you go to the next card, it lists the screenplay, the story, music, and producers. And then the last thing that's mentioned on like the slate credits is directed by Catherine Bigelow.
That's so upsetting.
Yeah. So her director credit was shoved all the way down at the bottom.
Like, and this wasn't even her first film. So, like, I think Near Dark might not have been her first film, but she had that one before, and that was like a pretty big hit. And yeah, that came out in 1987. So, like, it's not even an excuse that they can make where, like, she's not that well known. Let's put a more familiar name there. So it's just embarrassing, and like it's something that I guess I should be like accustomed to, at least for like if we're looking back. But it's just like I don't know. I don't know what to say that we haven't said before about this, but like I guess it's just not surprising.
Just frustrated noises.
Kind of. I'm just gonna grumble some more in the background. You guys continue. But yeah, I am curious if in the trailer, and I guess this is another thing I'll add to my list to like link to, but how much they emphasize the romance between him and Tori Kelly, because I like wondering if they tried to market it in two different ways, where they're like, well, we can't let the female director deter the male audience. Let's show all the action. And then stupid executive heads being like, well, what about the women? Let's show the romance, thinking that that's all we'd care about. So I am curious to see, like, I'd be curious to read more, I guess, about the marketing campaign for this, because I have to assume a lot of idiocy was like involved.
Yeah. I mean, there's one shot in the trailer where it's just like a pack of women in bikinis, and it's a good like 3 seconds just of the trailer.
Oh my
Like,
God.
oh God.
But I'm guessing there was none of Patrick Swayze like climbing on Keanu Reeves in the air to unleash his air unleash his parachute.
Nope.
The
None of that.
homoeroticism in this film was nuts. Like all the like heavy panting and grasping of hands in that scene was like I was dying. I was like, I see you, Bigelow. Like it reminded me what I don't know. It reminded me of Strangers on a Train a little bit and how he shot that, but that is such a sidebar that I'm not gonna dig into. I do want to talk, or actually I guess that kind of leads into the male gaze a little bit for both films. You know, do you think we saw a bit, or the female gaze, I guess, do you think we had a bit more of that in both Twilight and Point Break with the female directors? Or do you think, you know, they managed to kind of appeal to because I definitely thought some of the ways that like Keanu Reeves was shot was clearly like, you know, trying to catch certain eyes.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
That's what I really appreciated in that movie. No, sorry to sound like such a stereotypical girl, but yeah, no, I definitely
That's
think
not stereotypical though. He's beautiful.
yes. And I mean, in that movie, she made him like glow. It was quite I mean, yeah,
It's
I
very
definitely
true.
and I think that you definitely see it there. I think you didn't really see it. I don't know. I mean, I didn't really catch it as much as you usually do with like in regular blockbusters, but in the Romance and Point Break, I didn't really feel that male gaze that much, and maybe I wasn't paying attention and missed it, but I guess it wasn't as obvious. But you definitely saw a great appreciation for Keanu Reeves, and that was, and I think even the Twilight, and I definitely think you get to see a lot of like those close-ups of Edward.
For good or bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I never felt like Bella was objectified in any way in in the first film at least. So
Yeah, neither did I, which was a highlight.
hmm
So
yeah, I pretty much agree with with those statements. I don't really have anything else to add. Yeah.
no, that's fine. So are you two a fan of Bigelow's other work before I lead into my last questions, like specifically about Point Break?
I okay, I'm not a big fan of the Hurt Locker. I'm so sorry.
No,
I
it's
just
The Hurt Locker. So.
I saw it I think right after it won Best Picture, and I was like, well, it was good. I definitely felt it was an Academy Award worthy film. I just didn't really personally like it. I wasn't that captivated by it, but I did love Zero Dark 30. That was like so good. Jessica Chastain should have won the Oscar, but I think Jennifer Lawrence beat her that year. So
yeah.
And but yeah, I really love Zero Dark 30. I mean, even though it's like a pretty tough watch, it's like one of those movies I can watch a lot, which says a lot about me. But I don't know, I just find it like really, it was just so tense and captivating throughout. I don't know if I watched any other of Bigelow's films.
Yeah, she had like Near Dark and Strange Days, which I really want to see.
No, yeah. So I think so Point Break was my third movie of hers I saw.
Same. AJ, what about you?
Yeah, Point Break was my second of hers. I saw Zero Dark 30. And as difficult of a watch as it is, I thought it was just it's very deserving of all the accolades that it got, and she did a really, really great job with it. But yeah,
I'm gonna do this thing that I don't think we ever do, where I kind of disagree, because I really didn't like Zero Dark 30. And it's actually my least favorite Jessica Chastain role that I've seen.
What?
Yeah, I know. I feel terrible even saying it out loud. Like, it's one of these things where I'm like, should I just shut the fuck up? And, like,
Never.
But it's not even that I like Heather Hurt Locker that much. Like, I don't. I think Jeremy Renner's relatively good, and I thought Anthony Mackie was really good too. Mainly, I was just rooting for something to beat Avatar that year, so that I like put my eggs all in that basket. But I think it's just showing more that maybe Catherine Bigelow isn't like a director that I've clicked with yet, because I thought Zero Dark 30 was captivating only because of Chastain's character. Like, I was just thrilled to see it for what it was, not because I actually liked it that much. But I do think it's just Bigelow's, filmmaking tendencies haven't completely clicked with me yet. But I am desperate to see Near Dark and Strange Days, because those look a little bit more like genre based, and I love those, and I think that'll be kind of more interesting to see what her style really is. But so I have seen 3 of her films. I think Hurt Locker, I guess, out of the 3 is my favorite, but that leads me to my point, which is a lot of people have issues with Catherine Bigelow because she is her films are predominantly white. And like, so in the upcoming Detroit, where it's apparently the white male characters are the leads, which is, upsetting. And in the trailer, I know there's a lot of people annoyed because there was no line spoken by a Black female character. And given her history of male-dominated films, despite her pretty consistent career, it's making people kind of worried about what film is going to be coming out. So, what exactly is her role in Hollywood, I guess, moving forward? Like, with her position, should she be trying to cast more diverse films?
I mean, I don't think she should feel a pressure to. I mean, everyone should be diverse appropriately. Where if you're telling a story and it involves people of color or people of, different backgrounds, then you should cast those people and you should feature them the way they should be featured, like in a realistic and authentic way. So while I don't feel like she should be pressured to only do films like with a female lead or whatever, I think that if she's gonna tell a story, especially the story she is gonna set out to tell it with Detroit, then yeah, I feel like you should be more diverse. You should honor the perspectives of of the people who lived through those riots and tell their story. So yeah, I understand like people's like objections and like criticisms of that trailer. I saw the trailer. I wasn't really like blown away by it. I mean, again, I kind of like you. I'm not like the biggest Catherine Bigelow fan. I mean, I think I really like Zero Dark 30, but it's not like my favorite movie of all time or anything. And she's not a director that, oh my god, I can't wait to see her next movie. I'm not like that at all. So I just felt like I'll see these movies, but I'll see her new movie, but I don't know. I agree with people's objections of it. And again, I don't know enough about the history of those events that Detroit's based on to like really say something educated on it. But
no, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I understand.
Yeah, I guess in my case, it's that I saw these criticism by certain female critics online, and who I am as, a white woman, I kind of just take the, shut up and listen to other people talk sometimes if they know better. And that's kind of my point of view in this. But it does remind me, like, of our Sophia Coppola podcast last month, and somebody pointing out to me that, while the femininity in her films is great, it's very much white femininity. And, while it sucks that we have to sometimes like hold female directors to higher bars of standards because we're expecting them to be more progressive, I do think it's still necessary. Like, we can't just give it a pass because it's already a female director. Like, I still think we need to like expect more for them. So hopefully Detroit surprises us, I guess, and isn't just about the white male characters, which I just think will be mind-boggling to me. But but
Yeah, that would be something.
yeah, but I guess I'm just curious. Like, I just try to like, I don't know. Like, I guess I'm similar, Gabby, that I don't know enough to have like the most educated opinion about this, but I just think that if directors have a position of power in Hollywood, they should do what they can to allow the most diversity into their films as possible.
Right. And I think it's also a result of just like this systemic racism in Hollywood and the lack of diversity behind the scenes.
Definitely.
That like, you're making like, where Sofia Coppola is getting criticized for, the white feminism that is in her films. But at the same rate, if she kind of went into doing a film about like Black women, people might think it disingenuous because she's not Black and she doesn't understand it. And I mean, she can learn about it and listen to people's stories, but at the end of the day, would it still feel the same? Would it still feel real? And wouldn't it be more ideal to get a Black female filmmaker behind a project like that instead? And again, Hollywood doesn't give these people their chances at that. So it's really complicated. But I definitely think it's worth pointing out at the same time, because then you start getting people to think about these things. And maybe if Sofia Coppola feels like, okay, I can't, make this movie that people want me to make, but maybe I can help someone who can.
Yeah.
At least that's what I feel like should be happening. So
yeah. Because it's like just as shitty to kind of cast diversity and welcome in diversity into a film in a very disingenuous or inauthentic way as it is to take a film and make it all about white people. Like, it just, both are not good.
It's a fine line for sure. But I make sure to point it out because I don't want it to seem that white feminism is something that can just like pass through unguarded. Like a lot of people check it when it happens, and I think that's good. And I think it should be called out. But I do agree that it's kind of a fine line of like, are we judging them harder because they're women and they're not doing it? But it might just be, it seems like we're judging them harder because there's so much fewer of them, so that when we judge them, it's like more put into the spotlight. Whereas like we should all be judging the shit out of Wes Anderson for like
for real, yeah.
Like a lot of
having. And like as somebody who really as somebody who's really loved like 2 of his films, I can admit that it's an issue. Want to see his films, but want him to see him improve that aspect of his filmmaking at the same time. So actually, I don't know. I think it's a bit of a messy conversation that people have, but I think it's a worthy one for sure. But I wanted to definitely make sure we touched on a note that Gabby left about the casting in these 2 movies. I don't know if you want me to read it since I have it in front of me, or if you want to just talk about it.
Let's just talk about it. But mainly, one thing that really popped out to me was that Kristen Stewart and Keanu Reeves are both the leads in the 2 movies we discussed today. And they're both actors that received the same type of criticism about their acting. And a lot of people consider them bad actors or call them that, basically because their line delivery is sometimes pretty awkward, that it feels like bad acting sometimes, or maybe it's just bad writing. And you can't really tell, but it comes out, like it's very apparent at times. And I mean, you definitely see it in Point Break, just some parts where Keanu Reeves yelling, it's like, oh, okay, like you're cute, but and the same thing with like Kristen Stewart. I mean, it's just some, she got a lot of flack for her acting in Twilight, and I don't really think a lot of it was her fault, and I don't think a lot of it was bad. I just think it was just the type of acting we're not used to, and because I think when they aren't talking, they're very, I mean, they're very interesting. I mean, not just because they're attractive, but because they have this intensity, this kind of like magnifying screen presence that like comes off that makes you interested in them kind of right away. So I just felt like that was just kind of a weird little connection I found between the two movies. And I wonder if there's like a more, I guess, intuitive process for casting when it comes to when a female director is at the helm. If they're looking at more than just what we're used to, I guess, from actors. I don't know what you guys think about that.
AJ, I don't know if you wanted to respond first. I can. I have a response, but I've been talking a lot.
Yeah. I definitely agree in the fact that, especially you mentioned that there's this awkward line delivery, but they do have it. You call it a magnifying screen presence. I agree with that. I think that, yeah, I mean, there are moments where it's very, very apparent that they're kind of awkward in that. But I think there is something to be said for the vulnerability that the actors bring to their characters, and especially considering if there is something more intuitive about the casting process when it comes to a female director. I completely agree with that. I think casting an actress like Kristen Stewart, who is a little bit clumsy with her, I guess not her acting, because I do think that she's a nice actress. I think that when female directors approach a casting process, it's usually more authentic and there's more nuances to it. It's not necessarily like a perfect casting, if that makes any sense. I feel like I'm rambling at this point, but
no, you totally make sense. I agree with the nuance that I think they're looking for something maybe a little bit more specific. Yeah, just different than what maybe a male director has imagined, a character to be or to act like.
Yeah. Because I mean, not every high school girl that's 16, 17, however old Bella is, she's not going to be put together and completely like flawless, even if she's not dating a vampire. But I think that female directors, we've talked about it a lot, when they're actually directing a film, they bring more emotion to the film, and there are subtleties that you can pick up on, and it feels a little bit more real, even in something as campy as Point Break or kind of just wild as Twilight. Bringing that level of realism to the characters through the actors, I think that's kind of a testament to the female directors, picking more realistic actors, if that makes any sense.
No, it totally does. I was just going to add to it that I also think physicality was a big thing for both of them, because if you look at their works, their best examples of their like acting talents has come when they're allowed to be the most physical and like in tune with their own sense of self and body and whatever. Like Keanu Reeves is great in The Matrix, My Own Private Idaho, John Wick, which are all kind of very like physically demanding performances. And similarly, like Kristen Stewart's best in Personal Shopper and Clouds of Sils Maria and The Runaways, because again, she's kind of getting to embrace her own physicality. And I think that kind of natural charisma or that natural comfort in self is something that like the female directors of these films were able to kind of pick at. And I don't think necessarily that like Kristen Stewart's abilities translated well into Twilight, because I just don't think it was a character meant for her. I think it does show, maybe what the female vision is looking for. And that I think they're looking more for the natural charisma and the physicality that came off of them, rather than like, how are they going to sound specifically when they say this line, or are they going to be remembered for this role? So I think, or can they become iconic with this role? So again, I don't think Twilight or Point Break is a highlight necessarily in either actor's filmography, but I think they're interesting touchstones to go to see like where they came from, or like what was their kind of acting background before they found roles that like finally captured what these roles were trying to in the beginning. So if that makes any sense. But I do think they are very similar actors, Gabby, which is why I was really happy when you threw that in there, because I wouldn't have thought about it. But like, they are very wooden sometimes, but when they're great, they're magnetic, and you can't take your eyes off of them. I mean, Kristen Stewart was by and large the best part of Clouds and Stills Maria, and Keanu Reeves has never really lost fans. I mean, he's made some weird choices, and he's kind of not duck of Hollywood, but like, he's interesting, and his physicality is outstanding. So I don't know, but I think there's more similarities between them now.
Yeah, definitely.
But now that just makes me want to go like dig through his films, because I've seen a surprising amount of Kristen Stewart films. I've seen like C-movie Kristen Stewart films. Like,
during my Twilight days, I pretty much saw all her movies.
Did you see the Snake Eaters too?
Yeah, I did.
See? So did I.
I'm not kidding. Like, I've seen pretty much all of her movies, I think. I haven't seen Personal Shopper yet, but
it's so good.
It is so good.
Okay.
Sorry, my cat's attacking me. But yeah, no. So I think there's more to be explored in her filmography and his. But yeah, I really liked that point. I wanted to make sure we talked about it. But is there anything else you two wanted to add about the films? No.
No. Silence.
That's okay. So thank you all for listening. For June, we'll be talking about Wonder Woman. Yay! Everybody go see it again and again and again. It's so good. It made me cry twice. Out of happiness. And we're also going to be watching Lexi Alexander's The Punisher, which has a huge following, and I had never really heard about it, and I'm really disappointed in myself. So let us know if you'll be seeing Wonder Woman this weekend. Make sure to follow us at TYF Official, at Finding Her Voice. I'm at Allison AJ. AJ, Gabby, where can they find you?
I'm at AJ. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead, AJ.
I'm at AJ_Caulfield.
I'm at Gabriella Dell.
Okay, and thank you again for listening. We're on iTunes. We'll be on SoundCloud and Shout Engine this month. And, much love and happy listening. Bye.